If the thought of slowing down to speed up feels painful, then this episode is probably for you. When was the last time you actually laughed? When was the last time you just had fun?
As someone who's like a recovering high masculine girl, I will say that I didn't realize how much I was hiding in the doing because, to your point, I was absolutely terrified to be.
It was only when I had a huge identity crisis starting over at 39 that I was invited into this concept. I was challenged to sit still for 2 minutes. And I was like, this is torture. Who wants to slow down? That is bad.
How do you feel about yourself if you weren't making X amount of money? How would you feel about yourself if you didn't have the house that you live in? And like actually starting to assess, is your confidence directly correlated to the achievement?
Your worth isn't in what you produce, it's who you become.
Today, we are talking about the difference of being versus doing. And I have talked about this on other episodes, and you were like, okay, well, I want to understand more of like, what does that mean? We talked about masculine and feminine, but now we want to go a little deeper. What does it mean to really be versus doing? So today, we are unpacking all of that. We are going through the difference between being versus doing and really defining that for you and giving you examples, how to recognize the signs that you are someone who's overworked and potentially burnt out, the role of your childhood conditioning in understanding your work patterns and how you operate, how to transition from doing to being more in a state of being to have more harmony and flow in your business and in your life, and practical exercises that you can do for your nervous system regulation to really start to tap into more of a being state and constantly not being in the go, go, go. I am so excited today to be joined by Kelly Adams, because she is the go-to to be able to speak to all things on this topic. Kelly Adams is a dedicated mindset coach who specializes in empowering women to achieve personal and professional fulfillment. She has a background in elementary education and psychology from Indiana University, and she initially ventured into event planning, founding her company Ace Party and Event Management in 2006. But through her experience, Kelly recognized there was a profound impact of limiting beliefs and emotional obstacles that were really impacting people's lives. This realization was what led her to develop her R3 framework: release, reset, and rewire, a comprehensive approach to a mindset transformation for any entrepreneur. Drawing from over her 2 decades of experience in breathwork, NLP, EFT, psychology, subconscious rewiring, and more, Kelly now dedicates herself to guiding clients toward lasting success and personal growth. Through her coaching, she empowers women to break free from limiting beliefs, align their energy with their desires, and build sustainable strategies for success, all while providing unwavering support throughout the transformation journey. I am so excited for you to dive in today because this was, for me, such a good conversation, but also just so insightful that actually had tactical things that you could tune into for yourself to really see your state shift as a result of what we're going to talk about today. So I can't wait for you to learn from Kelly, and I can't wait for you to execute some of the different exercises and things she mentions. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Ambitious. I am so excited for today because if you listened to our masculine versus feminine episode, you guys heard us talk a lot about the concept of being versus doing. And in today's episode with today's guest, we're literally going to be unpacking this in such a clarifying and tactical way that I feel like today's going to kind of be like almost like a masterclass in the understanding of doing versus being. And so excited to introduce today's guest, Kelly. So excited to have you here and to have you on Ambitious.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm excited to dive in and give these ladies some huge aha moments and takeaways.
Yeah, well, I was saying obviously in the intro, you guys, that Kelly has been the mindset coach, the only mindset coach inside of all of our programs for any of our clients for years now. And we've known each other in the space even outside of that for years. And she works with a lot of different types of entrepreneurs in her business of all different levels and stages. So she genuinely has seen it all when it comes to mindset. And so I was like, who better to come on and talk about really the unpacking of doing versus being? So Kelly, I will say that, obviously you know me and known me for years. And because of that, I have a lot of clients and listeners who are very much either current me or old me, who are very much wired the same way. And if you guys are not watching, she's grinning right now because she knows exactly what I'm talking about. I feel like I'm still like a butterfly and I'm still trying to like understand my wings right now, but I definitely was like hardcore masculine in business and really I will say didn't really appreciate as much of the mindset side and the impact that had on business until probably I want to say like the last 2 years. And I actually just this year was kind of having this concept of doing versus being put into my ether or put into my life. And I was going through a lot with some massive life changes. And someone said to me, I think what you need to do is just be. And I remember looking at her and being like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, I don't know how to just be. I don't know what that means. And so I want to now I understand what it means, but I'm curious for the person who's thinking, maybe even pressing play on this episode. They're like, okay, doing versus being. I don't know if I get it. What really to you, how do you distinguish or define, I guess, the difference between someone who's doing versus someone who's being?
Yeah, I want to just back this up just slightly
Yeah.
because the reason I'm so passionate about this is because the first time around I built a company, I was completely in the masculine. It was only when I had a huge identity crisis starting over at 39 that I was invited into this concept. I was challenged to sit still for 2 minutes. And I was like, this is like torture. Sit still for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's when all the I always say your ego is not your amigo. That's when all these like
Mm,
really bad, scary thoughts started popping up in my head. I was like, who wants to slow down? That is bad.
mm,
So I think like even if you're just tuning in and just identifying here's like a first red flag. It should be a green flag awareness. If the thought of slowing down to speed up feels painful, then this episode is probably for you.
yeah. Yeah.
Because honest to goodness, how I started my journey was I was called to slow down for 30 days, start at 2 minutes and see if I could get my way up to 30 minutes. And it was like, I never in a million years thought I could do it. So I see you and I understand you no matter where you're at in this journey. I think the goal to ultimately get to is the duality of knowing when to balance the masculine and the feminine. You also always hear me say it's the difference between go, go, go and flow, flow, flow. You have
Mm,
to have both because the masculine energy and business gives us structure, gives us strategy, and allows us to execute.
mm,
But the part of business that I see a lot of high achieving women set aside or not pay attention to is that femininity, that feminine energy where it's like creativity, intuition, like your magnetism, like the thought of what if you get to have it all and business gets to be easier by you focusing on you and becoming a money magnet. Do you know what
mm,
I mean? When you feel and exude confidence and exude, I'm going to say sexiness because I always talk about go do a sexy girl walk, begin practicing, tap into that feminine energy. So I think
mm,
you need both to be successful, but most high achievers overuse their masculine because again, slowing down doesn't feel safe. Slowing
mhm,
down, and we're addicted to the validation. We're addicted to the praise. And so I guess I would love to dive in and start by giving you some things to almost like self check yourself. Like,
mm.
here's a checklist. We're going to give you a series of things. If you check more than 3 to 4, you automatically need to maybe practice or move into doing some of this work.
Yeah, well, I think, like, even to your point there about the aspect of starting to channel that, I think for me, in my journey of kind of like masculine, feminine, it felt like when someone would talk about like intuition or any of those things, it felt so non-tangible that I struggled to be able to see like what it would impact or how I would do it or am I doing it right or am I doing it wrong? And I kind of think about what we're talking about today almost in the context of like meditation
Yeah.
because with meditation, when you meditate, there isn't a goal. It's not like if you have thoughts that come into your mind when you're meditating, you're wrong. It's part of the process. Just like
Mhm,
to your point, you're going to have aspects that are masculine. That's part of the process. But it's
mhm.
really just overall tuning into the experience. And that's kind of for me an analogy that helped me to understand the feminine, which is really the fact that there's not really a way to do it right or wrong. And there also is a spectrum of how intense you want to be within your feminine energy in your business. But I will say, as someone who's like a recovering high masculine girl, I will say that, I didn't realize how much I was hiding in the doing, because to your point, I was absolutely terrified to be. And I actually had one of our private clients who had said this to me. She sat and I said, I just want you to sit with your journal, no noise, no podcast, no TV, no distraction, by yourself in your room, set a timer for 40 minutes, and I want you to just sit. And she's like, I within 10 minutes was bawling and my journal was filled because I was just actually having to sit in my body or sit in my thoughts. And I realized how much I don't do that. So yeah, I think for her, she didn't even realize, to your point of like kind of helping people to self-diagnose, is this me? She didn't even realize that she had an issue with being, because she was so go, 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 do, do, do. And so, yeah, I guess to your point, what are some of the things that someone might look for, or signs to you that maybe someone is very much a doer but not great at being?
Yeah. And let's even make this easier, because some of these words, intuition, feminine energy, embodiment, those are kind of words that we use a lot in social media, but let's like bring this down a little bit. I want you to think of, when was the last time you actually laughed? When was the last time you just had fun? Like, I'm always inviting in playfulness and fun. My whole philosophy is the more fun you have, the more money you make. When was the last time that you just allowed yourself to do something that wasn't on your to-do list just because? And so that's like a really simple, basic way to think about it. So let's dive in, because the first thing that is, I don't know, I'm kind of having fun using green flag versus red flag. So
Okay, cool. Let's do it.
green flag, if you're constantly exhausted, it's almost like this deep heaviness, you feel drained and you're burned out despite having achieved that goal and the next goal and the next goal, because it's never enough. Like, you're successful, but you don't feel successful because you're consistently raising the bar. And so it's never enough. It's never enough. Like, I was the girl who set a goal and my goals had goals. Like, I'd hit the goal, I would allow myself to like, "Yes, you did it," for like 30 seconds, and then
30
like,
seconds. Yeah.
"Next, what's next?" So it's like, when you move into the being from constant exhaustion, what that is I always say rest to receive. It's actually a really powerful place, because that's where you get to regenerate your power versus always pushing. Even if you like think, I like to bring like real life analogies to things to make it make sense to people. If you're in the gym and you're building muscle, you have off days. You go every other day. You take time, because your body has to regenerate, has to repower itself. And if you're constantly in a go state, it's never regenerating. You're actually living on adrenaline. Your cortisol's through the roof. You're probably in fight or flight at all times, because it's like, if you slow down, I keep going back to then what, because that's like, even if you stop working and maybe you've created a boundary, I'm going to stop at some obscene hour that you should have stopped at 5 or 6. And you're like, at 9 o'clock, I'm going to stop and watch TV with my partner. And then you
Yeah.
can't even do that, because you have to get up, you have to clean the kitchen, you have to do laundry. It's just like, you always have to be moving and shaking. So I feel like it's almost a constant exhaustion, but people don't even recognize it, because we're more comfortable in chaos than calm. So I always say we're more comfortable with the devil within than the unknown. So you're just so addicted to that feeling that anything else doesn't feel safe. And here's why I'm getting goosebumps, because here's why it's a real issue. Because we're high achievers for a reason.
Yeah.
It's not that we're running towards pleasure. A lot of times you're running from pain, but you don't even maybe know what that pain is. It's like the pain of maybe not being good enough, not being wanted enough. It's different. Everyone has something different that they're moving through. So it doesn't matter what it is, but there's been some point in your life over the years that it didn't feel safe, or you were wired to keep going. So now slowing down has a pain response associated with it versus pleasure. So you have to flip the script, and you definitely can't like dive into the pool. This is baby steps, because your nervous
Yeah.
system, do a lot of nervous system regulation with clients, because your nervous system is conditioned. It's equivalent to being addicted to cocaine, that dopamine that you're getting from being in that go state. So constant exhaustion. Can you relate to that or
I
any of
mean,
that wild?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I was like I thought it was the coffee. I was like, "Oh, maybe it's just, I have bad adrenals." I had all these things, but to your point, I think there's so many people that get identity or validation out of more work, more hours. I'm thinking about that 9 PM and how many people are like, if I'm hustling, I'm building, I'm, building this empire or creating. And so
Mhm.
we often can create justifications to why the work has to be done or needs to be
Yeah.
done, that we don't really entertain another way of doing business, especially because hard work is so, oftentimes really glamorized. But
Mhm.
I also want to unpack something that you said there as well, which is the fact of where is it coming from? Because I think for me, some of the biggest impact of mindset work and, any person who is a therapist, mindset coach, NLP coach, it doesn't matter who you are, will tell you your childhood has a lot of nuggets of wisdom for you
Mhm.
to learn about who you are today. And what I realized was it was only once I started to revisit my childhood, my upbringing, my beliefs, my quote unquote programming that was in
Yeah.
me that I realized, why I'm working the way that I am. I wasn't working because the business actually required me to put in those hours. I've never worked less than I do today in the whole span of my business. But I think there wasn't an understanding at the time when I would be putting in so many hours as to the root of why I was working that much. And so I think to your point, running from pain, you may think, oh, I'm just working a lot in my business. Or there could be a deeper root, which is my entire upbringing, money was always an issue within our home. And so I don't feel safe to not always have money in savings coming in. And anytime that I feel I'm not working toward making money, I'm in a state of panic or fear, or to your point, not safe. And that's what keeps you constantly pushing. So, yeah, I so resonate with that.
Yeah, and I was writing down as you were speaking because that would be attached to a money story, and that's where a lot of people have a lot of get to do a lot of good work is around that story because at one point in time as a little person and what you were speaking into, I do a lot of work 0 through 12 and the money story is created 0 through 7 most of the time too.
Mm,
And it's how we perceive these things as little people and, we're not going to shame anybody here. We're going to say that everybody does the best they can with what they have access to. But as little people, we perceive things. And so that's a very common thing. It's like, not to feel safe with money because it could be taken away at any given time. So you're trying to
mhm,
recreate that safety that was missing. And this is why it's powerful to do the work once you're a grown woman now, is because the things that served you as a little person, you get to choose differently now. You get to choose to
mm.
release the things that are no longer serving you, the outdated patterns, the outdated programming. And I always like jokingly say, it's like confession. I have a pattern interrupt that I use for this all the time. It's like, I feel blank, but I choose to feel this way. And I also choose to let it go. Because when we were little, we didn't have all the tools. So it wasn't a choice. We were like in our own survival mode. But now as an
Mhm,
adult, your foundational needs are met. You've got food in the fridge. Realistically, you're safe. But the body holds a book of stories. Everybody thinks the mind's in charge. Body moves, mind follows. So this is why it literally has to be released through the body on an energetic or somatic level because your body, it's like a sonar beam or headlights. I love using the analogy of headlights in a car. You're seeing 3 feet out in front of you. So it's like your body is scanning always out for danger. So,
mm.
if you don't have money, you're in danger. So guess what your body's telling you to do? Go, go, get more, do this, do that. So it's
Yeah.
like you can find pretty much the root of all resistance and all facets. I always call them as invisible roadblocks or resistance. You can find the majority through going to the root of the resistance, and it's typically back in childhood. I call them imprints.
And
There's things that get stored in us that we need to release.
yeah, and I just for anyone who's not as familiar with it, the word somatic or somatic release or energetic release, what might that look like? Or if you were thinking like for anyone who's not familiar with the term, what does that look like if they wanted to picture maybe an exercise or a reality of what that could look like in practice?
Yep. Anytime you're doing deep work or even you're journaling or you're in a therapy session or you're doing something deep with your coach, emotion is energy in motion. So I always tell my clients at the end of a call, 20 minutes, you need to go put on your favorite music and dance. You need to go move your body, lift heavy step, walk around and stop. You can even sit there and shake. You know what I mean? Shake
Mhm,
your hands
mhm,
because it's like a boiling pot of water. It comes up, but it has to come out. And that's why most people, I wish as little people, we knew how to properly process our emotions, but it's like sit there
mm,
and look prettier, be there, be quiet. Or you know what I mean? We're conditioned
mhm,
to shut
mhm,
them down. And so there's power in just feeling, dealing, and healing. So it's okay to feel it. The normal human
mm,
experience is to feel a whole array of emotions, not just happiness all the time. Some of our biggest growth comes from those other painful things we need to feel, but they don't need to stay in your body because then your body, those are like blockages. I call them energetic blockages because I think of our body as
mm.
our ability to create wealth, an energetic wealth container. So if you're
Yeah.
walking around with heavy potatoes all the time, like imagine how much harder you have to push just for everyday things. So basically, just think of it as anything that you're comfortable doing that is a release for you. Most of the time,
Mm.
it's working out, walking, dancing around the house. I don't know if you're into
Yeah.
yoga, Pilates, but things of that. So what comes up can actually come out.
I was gonna say the basis of all the work that I've done in the last year was actually around that motto. If it's coming up, it's coming out. Because I was notorious for when I started crying, especially if I was in front of people. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like I don't I don't know why I'm crying right now. I'm so sorry. Or like I'd be like, oh sorry, like just excuse me. And I would feel shame or embarrassment or frankly, to your point, not safe to cry. And I would always feel the need to cry and be like, I have to go do something. I have to distract myself. I have to stop what I'm feeling. And that motto of like literally a mentor said to me, listen, if it's coming up, it's coming out. Meaning every moment that you don't let out what you and I both know is coming up inside of you
Mhm.
is just something, to your point, that is literally adding more pressure on that lid of boiling water and cranking up the heat to the point where it explodes at some point, oftentimes in a moment or place where you don't want it to. So I think kind of to your point with some practices and with intention, which we'll talk about today, by building this into your routine or into part of your business, you will have tools to be able to regulate those in a way that feels safe for you rather than
Yeah.
having them necessarily always come up in a place where you don't feel safe.
And something else I want to add just in this exact moment when you said it, those feelings actually have a chemical response of about 90 seconds. It's a huge wave of emotion. So I tell people, just like a wave at the beach, a lot of times, I use breath work all the time too.
Yeah.
So it's like breathe through it. You've survived 100% of your hardest days so far. You're not going to die, although it feels like literally in that moment you're going to die, but breathe through it. It's not going to last forever. And literally, I used to tell people in the very beginning set a timer for 90 seconds, breathe through it. Trust
Mm.
me, it can't stay forever. It's a wave, it comes in a high and then it will leave. But
Mhm.
it's like just being with it in that moment instead of being afraid of it and pushing it back down.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Okay, another key indicator is we kind of touched on this a little bit, so I won't take much time here, but feeling unfulfilled despite success. So, outwardly, you always hear me say a public success and a private failure. That was
Mhm.
what I always self confessed as what I was back in the day before we sold the business. Like everybody, like on paper, we're like, oh my gosh, you're killing it. You did this, you did
Yeah.
but I was also eating a fast food, fast lifestyle. I was nutrient deficient. I
Yeah.
blacked out driving my daughter to school. And I mean, I burned out. Like, it's like it looks really good. So it's like you can still feel a sense of emptiness or dissatisfaction, regardless of any milestone or accolade or achievement
Mhm.
that you have.
Mhm.
And that's really a disconnection from your higher purpose. And that is a huge green flag that you need to focus on being rather than doing. So the switch is, and we'll dive into some tips on this, but how can you move to an internal knowingness and know that you are worthy just because you were born, period, not because you've achieved X, Y, and Z. So I use a lot with gratitude too, because it's like be thankful for what you have while expecting more. But don't put
Mhm.
everything in the more. Everybody puts all these business things up on a totem. And then you get to the
Mm.
top, and then, okay, where's my people? Where's my
Yeah.
people? Like, you got to take care of yourself and your people, or you're by yourself at the top, and that's lonely.
Yeah, I mean, I had that in my journey too. I remember like one of my biggest breakdowns was actually what I would consider to be like one of what at the time was my biggest goals was to have a seven-figure business. And I
Yeah.
remember when we hit that number, I was like dry shampoo, like 3 coffees deep that day, hadn't eaten, in my sweatpants, sitting on the couch. And I'm like, who do I call? I've been up till 3 o'clock in the morning doing this business. I'm so burnt out. I'm so uninspired. But yay, I hit this number. And I
Hmm.
wanna, like, even to your point, I wanna say, like, obviously, it's a privilege to say that because
Of
it's
course.
something that, of course, obviously is a massive amount of money. But the thing that I felt was, like, I was so focused on just do all the things to hit this target that I wasn't actually present and enjoying the process of the building. So then I was so destination focused that when I got there, I was like, "This doesn't even feel good." And it's something I see with scaling clients all the time because everyone has this idea that when I achieve blank, when I do blank, and what we know, even if it's not in the business context, like there's some people who are like, when I get married, when I have a kid, and
Mhm.
it's like, but then you have the kids and then they become 7 and you're like, okay, well, what now? And then the midlife crisis happens, right? So there's always this destination of like destination happiness that happens, and that trickles into a lot of facets of life, but also business. And I think the tricky part for most people that I see is being able to say, "Are you happy with yourself if I removed all of, to your point, your achievements or your accomplishments?" Like, how do you feel about yourself if you weren't making X amount of money? How would you feel about yourself if you didn't have the house that you live in? How would you feel? And like actually starting to assess are is your confidence directly correlated to the achievement? And if you were to remove the achievement, do you like it doesn't define me, I don't care. Like I could live in a shoebox and I'd be fine. If you have that perspective or if someone took away those accomplishments, do you feel like you know who you are? And I realized when I hit 7 figures, going for that goal took over my identity so much to the point that I didn't have hobbies, I didn't have friends. I removed everything else that didn't lead me to achieve. And then I realized I yes had achieved, i.e. checked the box, but the process wasn't enjoyable and I had none of the things that I had seen in the vision because I was so just in the process of get the stuff done and I wasn't really looking up at any point to actually check in along the way.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting flashbacks. Like I completely resonate. I remember when we sold our business, we sold our house. We were literally getting rid of everything we owned and taking off to Florida. But we had a huge house in Indiana. You know, you need a big house because there's nothing to do. But I remember standing upstairs in my dream master bathroom, looking out at a 20-yard dumpster filled with anything in my house that we didn't donate or given away. And I was like, I just worked my tush off for what? To fill up this huge house with all the stuff I just
Mhm.
got rid of? And I mean,
Mm.
that was just one of the many aha moments when I always say you're going on an unbecome to become journey because I wouldn't
Yeah.
change it for the world. I'm so happy, so fulfilled. But it's like seeing that was like, whoa. It was like, whoa, girl, what are you doing?
Yeah. And I think that the thing I would also say for anyone listening is that it's something that if you, again, are actually being and in tune with yourself and like your thoughts, your emotions, your body, I think that there is a way to not need to have that moment. Like for me, even, it was when I moved and I had to live out of a suitcase for 2 months. That was another aha moment of me of like, oh, I don't care about this stuff. Like this stuff is irrelevant to me because I had like 3 pairs of pants and 3 shirts in a suitcase and I was like as happy as ever. And
Right.
so I also want to say for the person who's listening, there in kind of what we're talking about today of being
Yeah.
and really tuning in, this is why this topic is so important because you don't necessarily have to get to a point where you go, holy crap, how did I get here?
Yeah.
There are the alarms or the aha moments along the way that if you're tuned into them will help you to be able to achieve the thing that you're going for while also when you get there feeling such massive fulfillment in the process and obviously in the achievement as well.
Yeah, and I noticed the more I did this kind of work, because I always say it shows up in different ways, even outside of work. So, like, if
Mm,
I wasn't working all the time, then I would be shopping. That like really fulfilled me. It gave me a quick dopamine hit. But the more I did this work and began to switch the script, Not that I don't love nice things, I do. Not that I don't want to make a lot of money, I do. But it's like they didn't fulfill me anymore because I was trying to fill this empty black hole with stuff and work versus like I could still go buy all those things, but now I don't want to. Like it kind of
Mhm.
took that need to constantly self-soothe myself away.
Well, it's interesting. Obviously, anyone who watches this or listens to my stuff knows I basically wear neutrals all day, every day. And so I had a closet that was full of clothes.
Yeah.
And when I moved, I remember looking at this thinking, I haven't worn 80% of these clothes. And so I went to my therapist and I was like, so weird. They have all these clothes. I don't even wear them. Like I'm putting them all away. I'm shipping them from one house to the next. And I've never worn any of these stupid clothes. They have freaking tags on them. And so anyway, and unpacking it deeper, literally that same thing came up, which was the fact that me having those clothes in my closet was not actually about the clothes at all, but actually about the fact that me knowing I had those clothes was a sign to me of achievement every day of like, you bought all these things, look at all the curation of your home and all the clothes that you wear. And really, to your point of being so in the doing, I was so in the reps of shopping for something I did not need nor really even want. I was just doing it because I was bored. And then having this home of stuff that always had a project because I realized if I didn't have something to fix, work on, try to achieve, I had to just sit with myself. And that was wildly uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
obviously we've got the person who's constantly going for achievements, never happy with the achievements. What are some, any other signs that you see
Yeah.
with people that you work with?
Inability to relax or rest. But let me explain it
Okay.
even a little bit more so they can self identify. You will probably have zero boundaries in your business. It's difficult to stop, rest, or take time off because you feel guilty or unproductive or lazy. And how this actually is just this is a really easy example to give the audience. But I remember when I would be working on an email. And there's certain things that you need to do during the business day, but you have this heavy resistance. But I would
Mhm.
move through all resistance. I would sit there because I had to get it done. It was on my list. I had to get it done. It wasn't even like a 911 an emergency, but it was on my list. I had to get it done no matter what. And I can remember sitting there pushing through it. And then it wasn't even good work. And so I always say heavy feelings equate to heavy actions, light feelings equate to light actions.
Mhm.
What I teach people to do now is chase the light feeling. If you can't rest or relax or let something go, chase the light feeling. What would I'm going to say highest self, but say a relaxed self? What my highest self or a more calm version of myself do right now in this moment? Well, I might go on a walk. And so, long story short, and then after the walk, okay, what would be next? And then if you follow that light feeling, then a few minutes later, 30, 60, doesn't matter, it's different for everyone, your creativity, your inspiration comes through, you come back and you do that same task in about a 2-minute window where I was sitting for over an hour to try to write something. So it's like, if you're in that heavy feeling, you have to do something to lighten it up. But learning how to relax is very hard because a lot of us have these stories that if you're relaxed, you're lazy, you know?
Yeah.
So
Well, I also want to say how you relax. Because, like, the thing that used to just get under my skin, just piss me off, was that people would say, like, you just need to sit down and watch TV. And I'm like, I don't want to freaking sit down and watch TV. Like, for me, at least,
yeah,
it wasn't something that made me, to your point, feel relaxed. Like it wasn't something that made me feel fulfilled when I was done with it. So I think people just saying, sit on the couch, stop working, what I realized was relaxation to me wasn't enjoyable because I was trying to relax in the way that everybody else did.
yeah.
And so, like, even for me now, it might be going and having a bath, to your point, going and having a walk. Like, to most people, maybe going on a 5K walk is not something that is their version of relaxation. It could be just rot on the couch. And, like, if so, like, I love that for you. But I think what I realized was I was struggling to relax because I thought relaxation had to also look a specific way.
Yeah.
And instead, I wasn't enough focused on how do I feel after I have done whatever the relaxation thing is. So, like, I find for example, for myself specifically, water has always been interesting because obviously, like, if you're sitting in a bath, you literally have to be still and not doing something. So I used to be, again, when I was in my masculine, I would take a bath, but I would like answer DMs or I would like be in my emails or whatever, like a crazy person. And so I was still never able to do it and just relax. So I had this kind of rule with myself when I was trying to flex this muscle of being able to relax to say, okay, you have to go in the bath, no music, no TV, no book, no distraction, just be. And I remember sitting there staring at the ceiling and I'm like, this is so boring. But what I realized is over time, by putting in the reps, I started to realize that it was actually the fact that I didn't enjoy my own company, i.e., my own mind, thoughts, and emotions.
Mhm.
That was the reason I wasn't enjoying it. And so I think it, even though the aspect for anyone listening who's like, I don't know how to relax, something I ask myself is in the things that I do when I'm done doing them or when I'm in the process even of doing them, how do I feel? And like another random one for me, even though I don't eat it, I give it away, is baking.
Yeah.
Like I bake not because I need to eat the muffin or because I even desire to have the brownies in my kitchen, more just like the actual process of just like being in the ritual of baking is such an enjoyable, relaxing thing for me. So like I randomly will bake for other people just out of something that again gives to that process for myself.
That's so good. And I can see why baking supports you because that's a disconnection, but it allows the creativity to come through. You're still creating
Mhm.
something. There's still a beginning and an end, but then there's that freedom of flow in the middle. But you said something
Mhm.
so good that I want to touch on. And every single thing, like say you want money, what's the feeling that actually money will give you? Freedom,
Yeah.
safety. If you think about all the things that are showing up in your life, and then think of the feelings associated with those, and then do something that creates that feeling, because that's what we're looking for. The body operates on feelings. So it's like, that's why some high achievers can't ever stop working because they want to feel safe. Okay, so what else can you feel, see, hear, or receive to give yourself that feeling of safety that's interdependent of work? Right?
Mhm. And I also feel in a way that sometimes in the process of tapping into being safe, you have to put yourself in a scenario to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think that's just, I would be curious. And I know I'm kind of pulling off course here, but I just feel like it'd be super helpful because I remember me being like, what the hell do you mean feel safe? Like I do feel safe. Like my life's not being threatened. I was somebody who was so scared, for example, to like one of the aspects of being in the feminine is being vulnerable.
Mhm.
And I was so scared to be vulnerable because now I understand that to be, I didn't feel safe to do so. But what had actually had to happen was kind of like to my point of like the extreme of being in a bath. I had to be put in situations where I was like challenged or faced with flex the muscle of being vulnerable. Okay, so I want to take a quick little brief interruption from today's episode to let you know about something really exciting. And I want to first preface there is nothing here that I have to sell you. This is about something that is entirely free that I think would be a massive support for you if you are someone who's loving all things ambitious podcast. So, we have created an absolutely incredible community that is called the Ambitious Network. This is really a place where coaching and masterminds meet high level networking of other women who are just like you. So, a little bit of what you can anticipate, this is a place for you to grow, to connect, and ultimately to get the support that you need to elevate your business. And so, some of the things you can anticipate inside, number one, live hot seat coaching. This is literally live coaching in the way that I would do inside of our masterminds and our different offers, only inside of this community, entirely free. You'll also get the opportunity to get access to exclusive giveaways that are not available anywhere else. So, these are things like giveaways of different books and resources that I'm obsessed with that have really helped me in my journey of business, but also things on a larger scale, like some of which have been 6 months of private coaching type of giveaways. So, all of this to be said, massive, massive amount of resources being given inside, and also trainings and resources, tools of frameworks and downloads and worksheets and masterclasses that are going to be things that will really help to take you and your business to the next level. Now, it's also not just about me. I have an incredible network and a community of other entrepreneurs who also want to give back to you if you've loved their interviews and their discussions on the Ambitious podcast. So, we have guests that are also providing resources in the community that will only be available inside the Ambitious Network. But there's also the networking aspect. And this is a place for you to not only connect with other women about what's going on in your business, what's currently working or not working in today's current market. It's a place to share wins, but it's also a place to connect with me and get my feedback and support for you and your business. Now, all of that to be said, this is a as I said, mastermind meets networking. And I really have created this as a community that I want to be something you've never gotten anywhere else. It's not this low ticket membership that you feel like you're paying for, this graveyard of resources that the person has that they don't know what to do with. And it's also not that Facebook group that you're inside of that you feel like you get tons of notifications, but you don't really want anything that's inside of it. It all feels surface level. We want to give you the ability to have mastermind meets high level networking all in one place. And the Ambitious Network is where you're going to find that. So, how you can get inside. If you want to go to the show notes beneath, you can click a link to join us inside the Ambitious Network. And if you also want to connect with me on Instagram, I'm also happy to chat with you about it. So, if you DM me the word ambitious, we'll be sure to chat a little bit more about the network for you and give you the link to get inside. So, all of that to be said, I don't want to take any more time away from today's episode. So, without further ado, let's get back into the show. So, I'm thinking for someone listening who's like, I really struggle to relax without thinking about work or being guilty about work, how do we kind of like kickstart that process when maybe every time we do, we feel called to get out of it? Like we're like, oh no, I don't want to relax right now. Or I tried, I just struggle with it. I can't. Like, do you believe in when it comes to, again, creating that safety and creating that relaxation? Do you ever believe in almost like exposure therapy in the sense of like giving yourself surrender to it and acknowledging I'm going to hate this, but I'm going to do it? Because for me, I had a friend in the midst of everything that happened with like my breakup, and she asked me to go sit on a blanket in the middle of a field. And I was like, what are you talking about? I brought my laptop because I was like, are we gonna like listen to something? Or are you doing something? And she's like, no, I just want you to be. And I was like, what are you talking about? And that situation basically was my exposure therapy, and it broke me because it made me realize, I was like, what are we doing here? She's like, I just want you to close your eyes and breathe. And I was like breath work? And I had like all these questions about what's the outcome? What are we looking to do? She's like, nothing. I just want you to feel the air on your face. I want you to sit on this blanket. I want you to sit in the field. So I'm wondering, for someone like past me who maybe has a really difficult time sitting still or, trying to relax, do you ever believe in kind of like exposure therapy being a way to help someone to jolt themselves into that process?
Yeah. I always say fear is false evidence appearing real. And knowing that your ego is not your amigo, it's going to fight against anything that it feels is not safe. Like, for example, when I did transition to the online space, everyone thinks, oh my gosh, how were you ever nervous to go live? I didn't have to go live in my corporate world. Like, that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
So, what I made myself do is go live every day for 30 days. And you know what? I had the hives all over. I couldn't even speak. It was like, but
Mm.
the only way is to feel the fear and do it anyway, because I was retraining my body that I'm actually safe. You're trying to protect me, but I'm good here. I'm not going to die if I hit, go live on a Facebook. It was Facebook back then. And
Yeah.
but I would literally, it was ridiculous. Like, I would stand there, play the song This Girl's on Fire. I would sway back and forth. I was too scared to speak. I have hives all over, but I felt the fear. I
Wow.
did it anyways. And by 30 days, I was like, let's go. It's
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
absolutely believe in it because control's a big issue for high achievers too. Because there's not a necessarily, we touched on this at the very beginning, a process to trust, a process to surrender, a process because, and so it's like the body doesn't know. I keep going back to the body because the body's so important. The body doesn't know if you're going to be safe if you
Mhm.
surrender, if you release, if you just go sit in a field, your body doesn't know if you're going to be safe. So it's trying to control things at all time. But I think you have to surrender to scale. You just have to, because we can't be control in everything in our businesses or companies. We can't be in control in our life at all times because ultimately, my personal opinion is we're not in control. So, I mean,
Mhm.
we're just like here. And so if you realize you're not really in control and you're not really that important, like, that's a huge thing I love to say to high achievers when they say, I can't stop working. I'm like, girl, you're not that important. And then they're like, well, what do you mean I'm not that important? You're not the president. You're not that important. You can rest. It's okay. But when someone hears that, it might temporarily sting for a moment. But then on the other side, they're like, well, okay, I guess I'm not. It is okay to let somebody help me or go sit in a field for 40 minutes and not die. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I like the questions that helped me, someone had said to me, which were impactful, were like, what would it look like if it was all easy?
Yeah.
Or what would it look like if you could rest and be successful? Or what would it look like if rest was the reason you were successful?
Yeah, that's
And I remember being like, "Well, no, because, I have to put these hours," and I had all these excuses. But the interesting part for me was, and maybe even for anyone listening who answers that question to themselves, hearing my justification as to why, "Oh, well, it won't be easy," or "It can't work out," or hearing me basically give a reason why I had to stay in this pattern was what I needed to hear of myself. I'm like, I feel like even therapy, sometimes when someone's in therapy or mindset work, just hearing yourself process, you go, "Oh my God, did I just say that?"
mhm.
So in that moment, it made me realize that like I'm also the one creating the resistance because to your point, I'm not flowing with the waves. I am fighting every wave that comes my way and being like, "Look at me, look how much I'm crushing." And you're like, "Yes, but everyone else is having a great time and is riding the waves because they're not so in the masculine, so in the doing or the aggression to kind of push through, but they're really just surrendering to your point."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes to everything you just said, honestly. It's just a huge, and just like you mentioned cold therapy or exposure therapy, I guarantee for anybody who does cold therapy, you didn't automatically get in and sit for 2 minutes.
No.
You get in for 30 seconds. Like
Yeah.
you have to also realize that there's a real resistance that the body has. So it's like dipping your toe in the pool. And then you go a little bit
Mm.
deeper and a little bit deeper. Your nervous system couldn't even handle you going from zero to now I'm going to be light and everything. And not, I mean, like, that's not even realistic. So it's like, it's slow, gradual changes that build upon each other to allow your body to begin to feel safer, one baby step at a time. It's not an all or nothing here. All you high achievers, it's not an all or nothing mentality. It's not black and white. You're entering into the gray space, the unknown.
And I think which is kind of to that point of all or nothing, being in itself is not a goal.
Right.
And I think that that's the hard part. For me, I'm like, how do I know if I'm being? That's the main question that people ask is like, if I'm someone who's always doing, how do I know if I'm relaxing? How do I know if I'm being? And the only way that I can explain that is like you will know, and it's not a matter of like you hit this marker or you rest this many hours. Like I think that that's what most people try to do is try to put it in a box because they think if they hit the box, they've hit the relaxation. But you and I both know the massages that we've gone to that we're like, "Oh, I'm not enjoying this. My mind's going a mile a minute,"
Yeah.
versus the massage that you went to and you feel like you fell asleep on the table because you were so relaxed. Both of them, you went to a massage for 60 minutes. Both of them had entirely different experiences because of the state in which you went through it in.
Yeah.
So I feel like being to me is almost kind of to your point, less of a goal in what you're doing or working toward, again, doing versus being, but more a matter of like a state, an experience that you go through.
Yeah. And to the being, like, I think a couple things you could think of is, are you being more aligned? Are you actually operating your business in a way that feels good to you? Are you being
Mm,
present? Or are you doing a million things at once? Are you being present at work? And are you being present with your family or friends or whatever around you? And just being more in tune with yourself. It absolutely does not mean stopping or quitting. It's just like this. It's like a song. It's like a slow dance. You know what I mean? It's like
mm,
it's flowing with life, it's trusting yourself, and it's creating sustainable success without burnout.
mm, mhm. So if someone is there any, I guess, other things that you feel like are on your list of things that if someone's listening, okay, so like obviously there's someone who probably struggles with rest. They maybe have that all or nothing thinking, which probably resonates with a lot of entrepreneurs. You're somebody who really is super, defined by achievement or maybe feels like achievement is kind of your only purpose. Is there anything else that you would say is a major aspect for anyone who may think, okay, is this me?
Okay, I bullet pointed these in 8. So let's
Cool.
summarize this for the
Yeah.
fun. Constant exhaustion, feeling unfulfilled despite success, overwhelm and lack of being actually present, disconnection not only from yourself but from your others as well, your inability to rest or relax, chasing validation, my personal favorite.
Mm.
And disconnection from intuition and creativity. Like, I really think like a huge green flag again is if I say, when was the last time you had fun? Or when was the last time you laughed? Most of high achieving perfectionist women cannot tell me. They cannot tell me because they kind of let that side go, that creativity, that just being. And if I say, well, what do you want? What do you like to do for fun? Like what you just mentioned earlier, they can't even tell me. So it's like in creativity, I mean, literally, when I was working on flexing that muscle, I'm not even like into painting, honestly, but I was called forward to get some watercolors and paper and just paint. And I'm like, okay, like, what am I painting? And so I'm just like, yeah, just painting. And it was just the act of like having fun and just being and bringing that. I always think it's bringing the inner child, it's bringing that little person inside of you. Think back to elementary school when you didn't have a care in the world and you're just coloring. You know what I mean? Or if you
Mm,
think of when
mhm.
you were little, how your imagination was. Like I played school all the time in my bedroom. It's like those types of things. Like how much of that are you letting in? So those are the 8 things that are the quickest, easiest to self-identify. And I
Got it.
guarantee you can, if you're listening or tuning in, if you're hitting that green flag of at least 50%, then you got some work.
Got some work to do. So I guess obviously, because I feel like again, like old me would be like, okay, definitely me. Because I again, even when I think about having fun, fun was like, where are we going? What are we doing? Like what are the things that we're going to go do instead of just like the experience of joy? And that's what I think would be the main distinction there is like the doing versus the actual feeling, the achievement versus the experience of something. And if someone is listening to this and maybe they're like, I have 50%, I have 60, I have 99%. Where do we start to rewire this? Where do we start to kind of set a new script and set a new kind of process for ourselves if we feel like this is something that we're resonating with?
Well, the first step I would want you to take is to do some shadow work because I think shadow work allows you to bring up the parts of yourself that you're not consciously aware of. I don't think anybody that's a high achieving woman is even self identifying necessarily as that in the way
Mm,
that we're speaking about it because it's like if you think back to your examples you shared or my examples, you're like, I'm working, I'm grinding, I'm hitting seven figures. You're not like, oh my gosh, I'm working all the time. Something could be wrong with me. Maybe I should relax. Like you're not even aware. So I always think you can't
mm,
solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it. So you have to do some work. Shadow work is my absolutely one of my favorite things to do. The framework I use is release, reset, rewire. So you have to release the beast. You have to know where you're stuck. No matter if it's in one of the things we just talked about, if you have a money story, it doesn't matter. Awareness is key because you can't clear what you can't see. But rewiring your beliefs. So rest isn't laziness, it's power. So you got to begin to flip the script. There's so many tools. Think of it as like you just have to have lots of tools to choose from. If I'm going to go out back and build a fence, I need a hammer, I need some nails, I need this. If you want to begin to get some movement here, maybe you do some shadow work, maybe you do some breath work, maybe you
mhm.
begin scripting. There's no right or wrong way to do this. It's just start with one step. But I love reframing thoughts. As high achievers, we're also conditioned to look for the worst case scenario. So, a very small tip is you're like, if I'm not working all the time, like here's the rabbit hole I would have went down. If I'm not working all the time, then I'm not going to have enough income. Then I can't pay my bills. Then I'm not going to have a house. Then I'm going to be homeless on the side of the street. Like it's like it goes. So it's
Mhm.
like the
Mhm.
reframe is if I'm going to go to that polar opposite, the negative belief, start going to the positive. What could happen if you just gave in a little bit, or if you just decided to reframe the thought that rest isn't laziness, it's power. You get to rest to receive. I always say rest to receive revenue because it's like, that's when the best ideas, the best downloads, like in
Yeah.
my rest, like every single morning, I do 3 pages of long form free handwriting. Everyone always wants to know what my routine is because they're like, you're so calm. Yeah, I work hard. And all I do is I wake up, have my cup of coffee, as high achieving women, you've got a brain full of thoughts at all times. I don't want my
Mm.
brain to rule the day. I want to rule the day. So I get 3 pages. It has to be 3 pages. 1 page is way too easy. 2 pages, you start to stretch. By the end of 3 pages, you're like, oh my gosh, life is great. But it's like you're getting all the thoughts out on paper. Give yourself a fighting chance for the day. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I was gonna say to that aspect of work and what it could look like if you were rested.
yeah.
I think for me, when I thought about slowing down, I'm just gonna be really transparent with everybody. I would see like the Hermosies who were like, I get up at 2 a.m. or I'm up till midnight, and like this is how you build a business, and like this is how you hustle. And so after consuming everyone who's like lots of hours, lots of hours, lots of hours, I basically got programmed
Mhm.
to be like, okay, hours equal success. Got it. So I was like, okay, put in the hours, which meant at the time, when I was in that first 18 months to going to 7 figures, I was literally, no word of a lie, working from 6 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock in the morning. And then I would quickly sleep, chug coffee, and get right back at it. And I found such achievement in that hustle. But what I struggled with when, again, in working in mindset work and in doing therapy, what I realized was I had this belief that the whole idea of like slow down to speed up, I never understood it, because I was like, how are you literally going to have me working less hours, working less on the business, i.e., putting in less reps, and somehow I'm going to make more muscle? It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it felt so contradicting. But to your point, I really realized that even now, I work a lot less hours than I did in that phase and have achieved more, and most importantly, have such a better process and experience of how I'm going through it, because I was like the anti-sleep club, because I was like, okay, like hustle, hustle, grind, grind. But what I didn't really account for was like, great, but how productive are you? Great, how much are you getting done?
There we go.
And so I would, to your point with the email, that's what I thought of when you said it. It would take me 2 hours to write a freaking email that should have taken me 10 minutes. But because I had no capacity, I had no battery, I had no way to do it effectively, easily, or in flow. And so now sleeping, call it 9 hours, which before to me was like, I don't sleep. I don't believe in it. I used to say, so crazy, to my coach a year ago. So this is very recent. I said, sleeping is an inconvenience. I don't like sleeping. I find it very inconvenient. And he was like, okay, we got some work to do. And so now, obviously, as I said, I sleep like 8, 9 hours a night. And even some people, like I was listening to a podcast recently, LeBron James sleeps 13 hours sometimes a night, and obviously is wildly successful. So I think it's also asking the question of, even if you are doing, are you in that actually being efficient? And is it possible that you could work less hours and just be more present and more in tune and therefore achieve more?
Oh, the answer is yes. You're a walking example. I'm an example. I still prioritize my kiddos, even though they're getting older and don't need me that much. I basically work Monday through Thursday, 9:30 to 3:30. And I make on my own without my husband 3 times what we paid ourselves in the company. Like, and
Mm, wow.
I'm not even working. Like, we were working 40 hours. He was probably working 60, 70 hours. Like, it was
Yeah.
crazy. So it's like piggybacking off what you just said, rest fuels creativity, magnetism, and you're sharper. You can make sharper, more quick decisions. Your worth isn't in what you produce, it's who you become. And then powerful leaders aren't rushing, they move with intention. So those are the 3 things, the
Mm,
bullet points that I had to kind of summarize what we just talked about, that one piece. So the shift, or the first question you could begin to ask yourself, what if slowing down, just invite yourself into this expansive question. What if slowing down actually speeds up my success? And right, then what? And just free write and see what comes through for you. You'll get some good
okay.
insight on that.
Amazing.
The next thing, I know you've done a lot of work around this too, that I want to talk about is regulating your nervous system. This is such a big one because
Huge.
your body gets it's like a dopamine hit. Everything, you're doing. It's like work becomes like Vegas, but in our body, it's like, ching, 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 ching. So it's like
Yeah.
you have to, so your body's addicted to the hustle. So you just have to know it's going to be uncomfortable at first. You're not gonna like
Mm,
it. You're gonna fight it. Just like, when I go to the gym or work out, like I don't wanna do it, but I tell myself, like, go for 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes in, I'm like, okay, I'm already here. I got this. So set a timer. I love timers because as a high achiever, it gives you a beginning and an end. So you can hate it,
yes.
you can fight it, but you're like, okay, it's 2 minutes. I can do it. If you're a
Yeah.
high achiever, work the system and make it work for you. Slow down, but be like, I'm only going to do it for 2 minutes. And then you're going to be winning because you slow down for 2 minutes. So timers don't
Yeah.
give you a safety beginning or end. So, and it's going to make you feel like you're missing something or falling behind, but you have to realize the body is more comfortable with the devil within than the unknown. Resting is just unknown. So you got to work on your nervous system. So ways to rewire safety in the being, breath work. Huge, huge, huge component of breath work. You can't breathe and focus on your BS at the same time. It's impossible.
And I also think it's something everyone has access to.
Yeah.
The thing that like I loved that it was passed on to me from a mentor was that nervous system regulation has to be something that you can do without any tools,
Yep.
space, like any if you were stuck on an airplane, can you do it? And it
Yep.
means that like if you're like, "Well, I regulate, but I have to like go to an ice bath." Well, guess what? If you're on an airplane, you're going to be a little bit up against it. So, it means in any tool that you're using, which I love breath work for that reason, it will change your state so fast. And most importantly, it's accessible to you always.
Yeah. And that's a great thing because the three kind of things I wanted to bring forward all are already within you. Because exactly like what you just said, it can't be this big to do thing because it already feels heavy to even take the action. So then if you have to go gather all your stuff,
Mm,
prepare, like it's like the path of least resistance here. So if you're just starting, either box breathing, which would be a 4 4 4 4 count, you're literally inhaling for a count of 4. I'm so visual, so I imagine drawing a line for a box, holding your
mhm,
breath for 4, releasing for 4, and then holding again. Or the 4 7 8 method is highly effective. You're inhaling through the nose for a count of 4, holding at the top for 7, and then you exhale for 8. The goal is with breath work, if you're going to be in it for even 60 seconds, 2 minutes, you can feel a difference. And again, this is key when you have that wave of emotion come up, is you want the exhale to be longer than the inhale, which will activate the parasympathetic part of your body, which sends a signal to relax. We're safe. You can
mm,
also, to relax quickly, you can hum the happy birthday song because it activates the vagus nerve and it will calm you down
mm,
instantly. So things like that, we have access to. Somatic work, literally tapping. Tapping is so easy. We all have access to that, to EFT tapping. Sometimes, like, I'm literally just going like, oh, I guess nobody can see me. I'm squeezing little parts of my body. And that's just an act of like placing my hands on myself to almost get present, get grounded. Or I'll often place my hand on my heart and say, I am safe, I am calm, and I choose to be here. I have the
mm,
best $10,000 tip. This is like a game changer. Anytime you need to, I'm digressing for 1 second because this tip is so good. Anytime you need to blank out your mind, if you are in that state, here's what you do. So you literally say out loud, why do I feel so stressed? I have all this work to do. Start with a why question and just sit for 30 seconds. And that's when all the voices pick up. Voice one, I'm stressed because you have this email to send, you have this client to call, blah, 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 blah. So you're setting, most of us, that's how we think. We're thinking of
mm,
why we're stressed or what we have to do. Now, if you do this, this is like pressing CTL, ATL, and delete on your computer system, which is going to calm your body instantly and give your mind a chance to perform. Then if you say, why am I so stressed? Take a deep breath and release. Here's the key. Shrug your shoulders, say, I don't know. It literally is like pure magic. Your mind goes completely blank and you can feel it go like an instant calm down because the key is your body again is always looking for danger or why you can't slow down or why you're not safe to slow down. So if you ask it a question or you're just thinking through it, it's going to tell you all these reasons you're not safe. If you have a
mm,
pattern interrupt and you ask the same question and say, I don't know, it confuses the heck out of your mind. It's like, well, I guess we don't know. So I guess we're going to be calm now. And it's like
mm.
instant. It's like the most calming thing you can do. I love sharing.
And I was just gonna add to that, one of the things that has been like an addition to my world this year is to stop asking why.
Yeah.
Because why is such a open-ended
Yeah.
your brain gets a free for all to just be like, "Well, here we go. Let's give her all the information even if it's not accurate." And so I also will say, just as a side note, just that popped up for me as you said that, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, trying to think about, and everyone always says this, so you've probably heard this before, but like the questions you ask will determine the answers that you receive. And
Mhm.
so if you're thinking about asking the question why, could you ask a more targeted question to say, what in the day today has come up that I feel is causing stress within my body?
Yeah.
That's a targeted container of reflection rather than just like, oh, why am I so stressed? Or why do I feel so rushed? The why aspect creates a very wide open gap of what your brain can give you, which in turn causes more stress. So just as a side note for anybody who feels like you're asking all the time why, because I was notorious for that. I'm like, why is it not working? Why am I stressed? Why this? All the time.
Well, and that's why I brought that up because, you're on the phone with a client or something. They're like, well, why am I so this? And that's what they're always asking. So then it's like, okay,
Mhm.
girl, sit here, do this right now. Stop speaking. Do this right now. Shut down
Mhm.
the monkey mind. Like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
You're not giving
Yep.
yourself a fighting chance. It's like that's great. So the other thing I wanted to say, the third kind of tip on this is time blocking. Schedule some white space. If you're a
Huge.
high achiever, you already love to crush off, check mark your list. It makes you feel accomplished. So put in white space into your calendar and honor it like a meeting, but it's a meeting with yourself. And then
Yeah.
when you're in that meeting with yourself, kind of a shadow work or a shift, you can ask yourself, what's the most aligned move I can make from a place of ease? And then, like,
Mm.
have some, that's just a thought you could move with, but build in the space to receive, to get those amazing thoughts to drop in, allow the creativity to flow, just be. And then, how can you enter back into your day with an aligned move? What's the most
Mhm.
aligned move I can take? Or who do I need to speak to specifically today? I'll ask that a lot. Who do I need to reach
Mm.
out to? Who do I need to speak to? Who's the most aligned person for that? And then just listen. Just listen because we're in such of the habit of giving orders, commanding, and you got to practice listening. God gave us two ears and one mouth for a reason. We need to listen twice as much as we speak.
Well, I think to your point about time blocking, it's huge. Like, I'm definitely a nerd for my calendar in the sense of like, like I'm always like, I got to send a booking for this, a booking for that. Cause if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. But I will say, one of the things that I actually learned from Craig Ballantyne, he has a book on it, which is called like, I think it's like The Perfect Week or something like that. And basically, what he starts with is that you have to focus with the things that are non business and put those in your calendar before anything else. And so, literally, for me, just to, Kelly's point of like masculine loves a good container, I basically have set containers. So, I have on my calendar, regardless of the week, like basically for the next 3 years, there's a recurring booking every day of start of day, end of day. It's literally a container. If it doesn't fit in there, it means it's not happening because it protects my mornings, it protects my evenings. And then what I realized I was notorious for is I would always overbook my lunch because I realized that if I book on top of my lunch, I was like, oh, I have like a little hour and a half there. I can get stuff done. Now that time, like even our team knows you do not book over it because it's like it's time to reset, change your energy, get in the sun, go for a walk, like do something again to like tune in. So you're really charged for the second half of the day. So I would actually say if you're looking for a tactic around this for anyone who's like, okay, well, like what do I do with it? I would block in what are you even going to allocate as your time and use that as a protective container. My start and stops are literally in red to like cue my brain, don't do it.
Yeah.
And so then in between there, before I ever book anything business wise in, I always book in my breaks before the business because then basically each week I'm building the business around what I value, not putting my values after the business.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
if you are listening and tuning in, your energy is your most valuable asset. So like Kate was talking about, you can't perform from an empty battery. So charge more and work less.
Mhm. Yeah, that too. There's also strategy things if you're working too much. That's for sure. Yeah.
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 So as you want to begin to embody this, I'm a huge advocate of embodying it. So stepping into the identity of the woman who is, and this is where you might feel like you're faking it to make it at first. You know what I mean? You're faking that you feel calm or that you're actually
Mm.
comfortable releasing any form of control. But like if you think of the woman that has it all, so another thing you want to do is spend more times in room where being is valued versus just all the doing. You're going to see how these people operate, and it's completely different. And they're probably making a
Mhm.
lot more money than you even want than you're making right now, honestly. So
Mm.
if
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
listening or tuning in, so dress, move, and show up as that level of you. So one thing this is such a small thing. Again, you need nothing else. To me, a woman that is perfectly balanced in the being and doing, she moves slow. She dresses well. She walks slow. So I would practice because I'm always like walk fast, I would practice slowing down. I practice eating slower. I put everything away. So it's like, because I like to tap into people that are older, wiser, and look like they have what I want. So I like to see how
Mhm.
they carry themselves, what they do. And they're not rushing around crazy with 900 things going on, putting out fires. They're
Yeah.
calmed, they're poised, they're in the control, they speak well. So show up. That's a very easy thing you can do to begin to embody that. Speak and think like a woman that you desire to be, balancing that. I always play this, not always, but I love to play this game with myself. Whereas, like, whatever I want to work on, say I wanted to release control, I like literally write the
Mm.
word control on a piece of paper, put it in the middle of the kitchen, my table. And then I think, fill up the chairs with people who I value how they show up in life. I'd be like, how would she respond? How would he respond? Because I'm practicing receiving, like no one else is really at my kitchen table, but I'm just practicing
Yeah.
hearing different perspectives because then I'm picking up on these different perspectives. Because sometimes we're like tunnel vision, we can only see it one way. So inviting in different perspectives is key. And then let go of over explaining, justifying, or proving yourself.
Yeah. Well, I actually super quick before you into that, when you said the slow aspect
Yeah.
and moving slow, talking slow, executing slow, what I was actually interesting is I was just recently listening to Diary of CEO, their podcast, and there was a behavioral analyst who came on and was talking about basically like he worked within like something like the CIA equivalent. I'm not sure if that was it directly, but his whole thing was literally assessing behavior. And he's like, one of the key traits of those who are wealthy is the speed at which they move. And it's in anything. Like if you see someone who's like frantic walking into a room when you're at a convention versus the person who feels like they walk slow,
Mhm.
they're confident in what it is that they're doing, the confidence and the level of correlation between speed and the wealth of the people that were in the room was directly correlated. So they had talked about when you like they were talking about in the context of how to basically create impact within a room, or anyone listening to this, how to create impact on social media. If you're like frantic, go, 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 indirectly, what it says to the other person is number one, you're emotionally dysregulated. And number two, what it also means is that you're so frantic about basically performing that what you're just being is not enough. You're so in the doing of, I got to do this, this, this for it to be enough. So I find when people are really confident, and I found this even with mentors I've worked with, they were so almost unbelievably calm
Yeah.
in a conversation. Like I would say like about something and they'd be like, I hear that. I'm like, okay. Like I'm like, I wanted someone to play at my speed. And what I realized was because they were moving slower, because they did speak slower, because they did tune in,
Mhm.
they had a deeper level of awareness of the person they were talking to, the information coming to their mind, the state of their feeling, and they were integrating it quicker because they were more in tune with it because they were moving slower. So I just want to accentuate that for people because I think sometimes we're like, rah, all the time, and you don't realize how fast you're moving. And it's actually one core, like from a science perspective, behavioral trait of people who are very successful is that they move, talk, and basically execute in their day to day in a slower manner because they're more present and more in tune with themselves.
And yeah, you and I, when we were jamming out before even getting on here, I'm like, yeah, I don't do stress, so we're fine.
Yeah.
For that, I'm like, I'm being slow. I'm not doing stress.
Yeah.
Like, let's
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
kind of a shift or like a shadow word prompt to bring this part full circle is if I trusted my success was inevitable, how would I move today? Kind of like you can almost have two lines, draw a line down the middle of paper, write how your day looks like and operates. And then if you knew whatever your goal was, 20, 50, 100, $1 million months, if you knew that was guaranteed, how would you then operate from a more embodied state of a woman who has it all? So
Mm.
that's like a good little fun exercise you could do. And then I have a couple final truths I wrote down. And then
Yeah, let's do it.
okay, so final truths. So, doing less equals receiving more. The more you lean into being, the more magnetic you become. And I mean, I know I say this all the time because I believe it, I preach it. I embody it every day, but your energy is your business card and it is your most precious asset. I literally probably work on myself 80% of the time and on my business 20% of the time. And like what I just
Yeah.
shared with you above, it hasn't impacted my income at all. It's actually made my income skyrocket. The more you
Mm.
feel safe and stillness, the more aligned opportunities flow. This is a big one because I was so convinced of how I was going to get money, what it was going to look like, how I was going to do it. I was literally blocking out aligned opportunities. So it's like when you're in stillness and you feel safe and you have that internal knowingness that you're going to be successful, then things that you never even thought of or weren't even in your wheelhouse have the opportunity to come to you because you're
Mm.
open to receive versus it's my way or the highway and this is how I'm going. And then
Mm.
the more you trust in yourself, the less you need to force success. And that kind of comes back to you don't have to earn rest. You don't have to prove your worth. You are already enough just because you were simply born. Business is a bonus. Money is a bonus. This life that we get to live is a bonus. So those are kind of the notes and things I wanted to jam out on today. Is there anything else you think that I didn't go?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the aspect of alignment, because I think for me, again, thinking back to like my very hardcore masculine self, when I would hear people talk about alignment, I'm like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. It felt so high level. It felt like, okay, like I'm doing something I don't want to do and now I'm doing it. But I think what ends up happening when you slow down, when you're again regulated and you're in tune with your emotions, and you're not in this like frantic emotional state, when you feel like achievement is not the only marker for how you make a decision, it all has this massive domino effect. And I think if I could explain alignment and how being correlated to this to me, I didn't realize that I was on a treadmill when I had been running the business. Like, it was felt like I was going, 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 going.
Yeah.
And because I was going so much, I was making decisions very fast. I was, saying things very quickly in the sense of like, okay, like we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, or like recommending a strategy. Or even I'm thinking with clients, like if you're somebody who's not comfortable with stillness and space, I saw this come up with clients. If they weren't speaking, I was filling the space
Yeah.
by saying something because I actually wasn't comfortable with just having space. And again, what came up or how this came up was I was working with a coach who spoke very slow in the sense of like who was very calm and very centered and also allowed a lot of space. And I was kind of like, what the heck is going on here? Because it was so like
Annoying.
very, very slow and yeah, very, very slow and different paced than I was used to. But what I realized was when we talk about like alignment, this is also going to correlate into every aspect of your business. It could be impacting and even in your life, it could be impacting how you're interfacing with your clients.
Mm.
It can impact by not being regulated and not being present how you make decisions in your business of how you're going to grow or scale. And I also saw, interestingly enough, how this actually correlated in understanding being and being present, how it correlated even in friendships, i.e., not in business or like in interconnecting with other people. Because sometimes I found myself when someone was in a conversation, again, when I was go, 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 and I was on the treadmill, they would say something and I wasn't even hearing them. I was already prepping what I was going to say next because my brain could not tune in. And so I also want to say for anyone listening today, like a lot of obviously what we talk about is not only applicable to business, but it's applicable to so many areas because if you're I'm thinking even, I know somebody that has a kid who's 8 and basically they were like, there's go, 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 and you're at the grocery store and I gotta get this. And like, where is he? He's somewhere here and like freaking out about go, go, go. But they said like sometimes I just realized I put my phone down and I turned off the radio and I did again like really slow, deep breath. And I tuned into being like tuning into my family, tuning into, yes, they're here and they're around me, but there's such a different experience of like being at the beach, technically speaking, versus experiencing the beach, being with your kids versus experiencing your kids, being with your business versus experiencing your business. And I think that's for me what has been the download of the doing versus being is, and this is why she had said, you guys, you can have the same business and literally make triple the amount of money and sometimes even less hours. And that's because I find when you're in a state of really knowing how to be, and be present and be with yourself and be regulated, you literally see different opportunities. You see different pathways. You see different actions. You literally have an alternative reality that's happening in the exact same actions that you're taking today. And when I started to get a taste of that, that was actually what correlated for me. Whoa, this can be so much easier. Business can be so flow. Business can be fun. Business can be easy. And it doesn't have to be so stressful. And I was making it stressful just based off the fact that I liked achievement. And what I will say with a lot of women in their masculine is you create fires so you can put them out. Like you have this kind of achievement of creating a disaster so you can be the hero who
I was
fixed the
literally
problem.
writing
Like,
down the hero mentality. That's what you're talking about. Yeah. You're like,
yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the only thing I would just love to hear your thoughts on because I know you obviously work with so many women that are in that bucket.
yeah. So that's exactly right. It's like, that's why calm is so uncomfortable, because if there's other moments of calm, you're creating chaos, because then you come and you're like, I saved the day. Not only did I clean the house, take care of the children, I signed
Mhm.
14 clients and made $8 million this month. It's like, so it's like, hooray. So it's like the hero mentality. But something when you were speaking about the doing to being, as a high achieving woman in recovery. And the goal is you're never going to get rid of these things, because some of these are your best assets in business, but it's about
Mhm.
managing them.
Mhm.
It's about managing them, not completely getting rid of them, having the right tools. Like when I said, build a fence, you need to have the right tools to manage yourself throughout the day. But something I had to do to begin to practice transitioning into different roles, I used a bracelet. This is a ring I use as a totem still to this day for something else. But I would get a piece of jewelry out. And when I was going into mom mode, or when I was going into my white space, because the mind works off signals and stuff too. So I
Mhm.
would take this bracelet out to wire in a signal to my mind, it's time to switch gears. So I find that, like, some sort of visual representation or totem that you always have access to, if it's a ring you put on, if it's lip gloss, it doesn't matter what it is, but something that's there, because what that is that'll create a ping. It's like a new pathway, it's a new way of thinking in your brain. Imagine like a
Yeah.
hiking trail. The way you're doing things right now, that trail, you could walk into the forest and jump on that trail. The way you're doing things are on autopilot now. So the very first time you create a new path, it's like the mind wants to go back to the comfortable path. But like,
Yeah.
that's a totem that helps strengthen, hey, I'm actually going to go on this path this time. So what you're doing is, it's like you're X amount years old. I'm 45, almost 46. I operated this way until I was 39. So it took work to uncondition and unbecome. So I had to use these little tricks and tips to retrain my brain a new way of thinking and doing it, because it was not natural. So that bracelet just came through as a really good example that helped me, because it was really hard for me to turn off work and then all of a sudden be like a wife and a mom, all this.
Well, I think it also feels for some people in a way, and this is how I felt, it felt contradicting
Yeah,
because the path of being is work, which is doing. So you start to think, okay, well, like now I feel like I'm doing because I'm working at being, and it feels like it's so contradicting. One of the things that I did to that point, and mine wasn't as much like a physical thing as much as it was a space thing. I am home a lot, obviously, and working from home.
yeah,
And what I found was, in my previous space, I would work on the couch, I'd work at the kitchen table, I'd work, again, as I said, I would answer emails in the bathtub. Like I would work everywhere.
yeah,
And what I now have is kind of like one of my rules is like I don't work in bed and I don't work outside of the office unless absolutely necessary for whatever reason.
that's good.
Because what it means to me is when I close that door,
Yeah,
it means I'm done with it and I'm moving on. And I also want to say for anyone who feels like I know a lot of women who have this in the sense of their phone. They're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're seeing their DMs, all these things. I got so absolutely aggressive with my day and when I go into certain apps. And because of that, I basically at 6 o'clock, I'm not on social media.
yeah,
And I'm someone who creates a lot, but I don't consume a lot and I'm not on there a lot because I found that it was basically keeping me in the bucket of business, because you can't consume social media without seeing the DMs come in. You can't consume social media without seeing so-and-so business person sharing their next milestone. You're like, crap, I need to get going on my business, right? Like you have to also create, I find, to your point, give yourself a fighting chance of success at this by giving yourself space to succeed.
Yeah.
Like if you know that you're a doom scroller, or if you know that your laptop's nearby, you're going to open it.
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself structure and space in whatever capacity that looks like to have success, to say, okay, great, I'm not going to do that after this hour. And here's a habit that I'm going to start to integrate, or a practice I want to integrate that helps me to center. So like even for me, one of my rules is I don't touch business anytime before 10 a.m. And for me, that structure has meant that even if it's like 8 o'clock and I'm sitting there and I'm waiting, natural old me would be like, fill the space, fill the space. But it's like, okay, well, can I go for a walk? Should I maybe make myself a nice breakfast? Like do something that just tunes into yourself. And again, increases joy, increases connection with your emotional being, tuning into your mindset, starting to give yourself structures to actually create space for you to succeed with this, instead of thinking you're just going to figure it out and it will kind of create itself. You can actually look to do in order to be.
I feel so proud of you just hearing you speak like this.
Thanks. Guys, Kelly knew old me, okay? It was not good. It was not good. It was very unbalanced.
It's still like, oh my gosh, just seeing you in this like arena now is like, oh my gosh, it's like game changer. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. And Grace needs to be your middle name. If, as you guys are listening and making these changes, you've heard Kate say it was a series of a couple of years. You heard me say it was a series of a couple of years. It's not like this instant overnight. It's not Amazon
Mhm.
Prime. It's not coming. It's not coming tomorrow. But it's like,
Yeah.
let's take a baby step. Practice, play around with it. It doesn't need to be
Mm.
this big, huge thing. Create the
Mhm.
awareness. Find what's your main core issues on why you don't feel safe or what you need to release, and then make an action step. Pick one action step, one thing you can bring into your life. I'd rather have you bring in small things and be 1% better than give up everything and try to be 90% better. So it's not about
Mm.
necessarily giving up all these ways of doing life and that you're conditioned to, but when you naturally start slowly adding in little things, you realize, oh my goodness, this feels good. And then some of the
Mm.
other naturally begins to fall away. So it is a journey, it's not a sprint.
Mhm. 100%. All right. Well, obviously, we covered so much. We covered the definition between doing and being. We've got symptoms for you to be able to analyze yourself and know if you are someone who's struggling with just being and being present. The core steps you need to follow in order to kind of start to get into the practice of tuning in and looking at ways to be better within being. Obviously, there's so much to take away from today, and I want to say, like, I also feel like, as she said, it is a prolonged practice. It's not something I love the Amazon Prime. It's not something that's going to be happening tomorrow, i.e., the first time I sat in a field, I hated every minute of it. Now, very different experience. For anyone listening, we always try to end every episode with like a nugget from each person, because every single person who's been on here has had a, successful business, has had sometimes multiple businesses, many years in business. And so I'm curious if you have, a nugget of advice, and it doesn't have to be about this topic specifically, but just anything that you would want to say to the person listening who really is somebody who is extremely driven, who's going for massive goals, basically in every area of her life, and just wants to crush in everything.
Us.
Yeah. And really, anything that you've learned, or maybe insights, or a takeaway along your journey that you feel like really is something that you either feel like you'd want to share with her, or that maybe she needs to hear.
I mean, this is the very first thing that intuitively comes up. So I'm just going to lean into that. You're never going to outperform how you feel. So your job is to feel as good as possible. And I love the quote, when you feel good, you play good. And when you play good, they pay good. So you can
Mm.
still have fun. It gets to be easier and you can have so much fun in your business. Like we all have these businesses, and we didn't start these businesses to be confined by working 24/7 and burning out. Been there, done that. So
Mhm.
knowing that like there is an easier way, lean on people who've been there, done that, and kind of jump onto their coattail and just learn from them, because it does. It
Mhm.
gets to be easy, it gets to be fun, and you're never going to outperform how you feel. So focus on feeling good and your business will take care of itself.
I love it. I love it. And I agree. All yes to that. Okay, Kelly, if someone wants to connect with you, they feel like today maybe scratched the surface for them and they're like, I resonate with 99% of this or 50 or 40% of it, and I got some work to do.
Mhm.
Where is the best place for them to connect with you and to kind of learn more about obviously this topic and chat with you more about it, and obviously diving more into understanding their mindset as a CEO?
Yeah. So you guys heard me bring this up quite a few times because I think awareness is key. So I created 5 days to an unstoppable mindset. The whole video series, there's visualizations in there, there's shadow work prompts. The whole point of this free experience is to create the awareness. That's step one, because you can't clear what you can't see. So
Mm.
on my website, which is www.kellyadamscoach.com, right at the top's pretty, you can't miss it. It'll say 5 day free challenge. Grab that, work through it, move it, create the awareness. Then it's up
Mm.
to you if you want to take action on your own. If you need support, you know where to find me and reach out. And I spend the majority of my time on Instagram, which is Kelly Adams Coaching.
Amazing. All right, guys. Well, I feel like you have like doctor's orders. You have all the things you need. You've been diagnosed today and you've been given your prescription on how to go fix. So, my only recommendation to end today is just go be and go start with some of the steps that we obviously talked about today, and start to also use it as an opportunity to reflect and see if this landed today, there's a reason. And one of the things that I will say from my journey, I'm sure Kelly can attest this as well. If you feel like something landed today and you feel like it kind of tickled in a way and you're like, that feels like it kind of fits a little bit, it's your invitation to dive into it. And I think to her point earlier of the motto, if it's coming up, it's coming out. It really, if something is coming up for you, there's something that needs to be processed here. There's something that you want to dive into. So whether it's on your own, like she's saying, going through the challenge or the resources, or even getting coaching and support with her, whatever it may be, I think the one thing I will say as someone, as she said, is like a recovering masculine energy fanatic, I will say one of my biggest regrets in business was not doing this work a lot earlier, because my business could have been more flow, more enjoyable, and frankly more successful if I had. So I will tell you, as someone who's scaled a business, if I had done this earlier, my business and your business will be much easier. So, all of that to say, you guys, we will see you next week. Thank you so, so much, Kelly, for coming on today. It was so, so good.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll see you on next week's episode. Until then, as always, stay ambitious.